Welcome to the Growth Over Grades podcast, a show connecting you with thought leaders, pioneers, and change agents who are leading the charge to support schools and districts in making the shift toward competency-based education and to promote growth over grades. I'm Jordan Lewis, and on the show today, we have inspirational leader, child advocate, and National Director of Partnerships for Big Picture Learning, Dr. Sonn Sam. Dr. Sam is the National Director of Partnerships for Big Picture Learning, an organization he has dedicated himself to since 2003. He has held multiple roles, including Principal and Chief Innovation Officer at East Side High School in New Jersey, where he led the renowned Big Picture Academy. In this pivotal role, Sonn focused on expanding the internship program and deepening the rigor of student projects. The Big Picture Academy became an essential innovation model within the Newark Public School District under his leadership, and he personally mentored a Big Picture advisor who won Teacher of the Year in 2017. Outside of Big Picture, Sonn is a leader at large, utilizing technology to transform teaching and learning. Today, we've dived deep into why schools need to provide students with real-world learning experiences and how, through these activities, educators can create exciting, vibrant, engaging experiences. We chat about strategy on how school systems can overcome resistance towards systematic change and the pillars that make Big Picture Learning a renowned design for schools. Now, to my conversation with Dr. Sonn Sam. Sonn, first of all, thank you for the time. Thank you for joining us here on the show. I'm really excited for today's conversation. You've already brought wisdom to me offline to this for the folks that are listening. We're both attending the full-scale symposium that's happening in New Orleans, the kind of premier place for thought leaders around competency-based education to come together. And I've got nothing but good tips about how to spend my time. So thank you for that wisdom. And thank you for joining us here today on the show.
Honored to be here, Jordan. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, we're going to hit you with some hard-pressing questions right out of the gate.
Yes, let's do it.
Joining us here from Big Picture Learning. And we know that, hey, Big Picture Learning's approach is very rooted in real-world relevance surrounding the education of our students. As the National Director of Partnerships, what do you see as the most compelling evidence that you're kind of presenting to potential districts that shows real world relevance as a model to accelerate student preparedness?
Yeah, I think on a human level, I just want to connect us on a mission that we all have, and that is to help all young people thrive. You know, Big Picture's design is exactly built on that, but under that umbrella of thriving, the mechanism that we work towards is getting young people better aligned to their purpose in life. And these real world experiences exactly do that. So this is about thriving. This is about flourishing. So that's one of the ways with which I think all of us, the common denominator, why we do the work is that we love young people, we believe in young people, and we want to make sure that they reach adulthood just thriving, flourishing. Like that's what we want for all of our young people. And when you bring in the real world learning, the relevancy, it is one of the most powerful pedagogical methodology, however you want to call it, to really help navigate young people to get to that space of thriving. So,
you know, I always find it really interesting when I am working with any district and they talk about real world relevance or career readiness, the buzzword around career readiness happening right now. And I always see it kind of taking place in senior years of school. Okay, in 11th and 12th grade, you're going to have the chance to, attend this career fair. And then the expectation is that it's just going to all of a sudden click for that student and they're going to have the image of what they want to do. Always seems a little bit crazy to me. And it sounds like, the supports that Big Picture Learning is doing is to actually kind of shift that mindset and make this more about culture of an entire student's journey. Is that a fair assumption to make?
Yes. That and that's not an assumption. That is the practice. And we start as early as pre-K and kindergarten. So it's not just a 12th grade, like, let me connect to something like you want to do. I think, and just think about it, just for us as adults, right? As we've navigated to our calling, what type of experiences have helped us form and brought us to this place? Who have we been connected to? What interests have we hopped in, hopped out? What are the things that we said, oh, I thought I was interested in this. So it's just like, no, this is not it. What are all those life experiences that really gave us this really, really powerful knowledge of the first powerful knowledge is who am I in this world? And to love myself in the process. But then also to acknowledge what's my strength? And then when I find my strength, it's just like, how does that connect to my purpose? And how do I give back, during my time in my life here? Like all those things cannot be truncated into a year, senior year. It's sort of our K-12 work that we do with young people. And it's sort of a gradual release that we walk with young people.
I think the gradual release is something that is really important to just double click on. A lot of anytime anything new is brought forward, there's always fear, and we know our teachers are really overwhelmed right now, but this idea of the gradual release allows this to just integrate in a much more organic way across a broad system for the students. But I am really curious about something, and I see a lot of districts struggle to not remain heavily focused on kind of the academic and that transcript, and families struggle around not having the student excel on things like their SATs or the standardized tests. But with your model, it's proving to help accelerate that. So how do you see these learning experiences accelerate academic outcomes as well as students understanding kind of what and who they want to become?
Yeah, I think the key word that you said earlier is the relevancy. Because if anyone who has worked with young people, there's two facts that I would like to double click on as well. First and foremost, all young people are truth tellers. Whether we want to hear it or not, like young people are truth tellers. They'll let you know how it is and how they feel about it. But they also can sniff out when someone is not being authentic, right? So I love that about young people. What we're trying to tap into is that intrinsic motivation for young people. And we can talk about academics all day, but if young people don't understand why they're learning it and what's the purpose and how it connects to them and their life and their future, it's very hard to bring in relevancy. It's a very sort of transactional relationship, and they know, like, you know what I mean? Like, I've done it, so I just want to say that out loud. Like, here's my assignment, do my assignment, I'll grade the assignment and give it back to you, right? It's a very transactional sort of process. But when young people have a deeper understanding of why they're doing something, how it contributes to their overall growth over time, and how it connects to their lives and to their future, all those things, I would say, point us in a direction of rigor. Right. And I'll just say, since we're talking about academics, a big picture, when we think about rigor, there's three different components that are really important to us. Yes, it is the academic skills, but it is also the career connected skills, and it's also the social emotional learning skills. In the US right now, it's the durable skills. Those three areas, it's a sweet spot for highly rigorous learning. And academics is just, one aspect of that. And we care deeply about that aspect as well. So you connect this, and you are very explicit around the relevancy and why young people are learning what they're doing, right? So how does that translate to high levels of academic rigor? Well, first and foremost, young people know why they're learning, So that is that motivation for them to go deeper versus someone saying, just do this because I told you. Right. Just do this because it's on the curriculum. Just do this because we need to do this before we take the standardized test. It's much deeper than that. The second thing to it is, if there's an opportunity, and specifically I'll speak to our schools, for them to lead and design the learning, there is an ownership around the depth of academic skills in a way that you don't see a lot in the compliance-driven system. Because a lot of the times, curriculum, scope, and sequence has already been pre-baked and cooked, and it's just a matter of serving it to the students. Whereas in big picture, it's like, hey, let's go to the kitchen. What are you interested in learning how to cook today? All right, let's think about some recipes. All right, what are the tools that you need? Like, what are the processes you need to develop in your skills? First of all, reflect on yourself as a learner before we start. And I have a head chef here who's going to help you in learning, what are the tools that you need? Like, what are the processes you need to develop in your skills? First of all, reflect on yourself as a learner before we start. And let's have a head chef here who's going to help you in learning like how to, like, there is that side that just is fertile soil for depth around academic learning in a way in our design. And everything is interdisciplinary, you know? The most important thing, I think, when you think about academic rigor is it's one student at a time. You know, there is no one size fits all. So a student is co-designing their own projects around learning. It just opens up the door for universal design for learning in a way that is so intrinsic, so human. Like the process is just really centering learning around the development of young people. And we're leveraging their interests and their strengths. And then, because fundamentally, here's a core belief at the picture. Students are the curriculum and the community is the school.
Mm.
So when we say students are the curriculum, their interests are the curriculum. And we build all these skills around this interest. And we not only have the expertise of the teacher, which we call an advisor, but we also have this industry expert in this ecosystem as well. And they're giving their expertise and mentorship to the young person. And then I just want to say out loud, because a lot of times in the space that we're in education, there's one expert that we don't acknowledge at all. And that's the young person. Mm. Yes, they are experts. They are students. They are learning from us. They are growing, but they are experts of their passions. They are experts of their interests. And it would behoove us to leverage their expertise to deepen all of their learning. So, yeah.
A few things to just kind of unpack and build on. You mentioned the teacher as the advisor in this experience. I want to kind of circle back and click on that and dive in a bit further. But before we get to that, I also am just curious about, you know, back to the academic rigor factor, not to lean into it too heavily, but we do see a lot of folks who, you know, as a system might become resistant to this because they don't feel like there are enough guardrails put up, or perhaps there's lack of consistency, or perhaps there's just not a big enough transformational shift taking place. So if I'm a leader here today and thinking, okay, what Sonn is saying, like, I am in for, I understand the idea of wanting to really lean into the students as curriculum idea, but there's, you know, resistance with my teaching staff. You know, what's advice that you can say that I can start making some small shifts toward having experiences for our students, or maintaining kind of this high level of education in my building?
Yeah, I think a couple of things I'll get into, because it's sort of like transcending into the heart of the work, which is building sustainable transformation in education. Yes. And we've been doing it for 30 years and learned a ton of stuff along the way. So I'll just say this. I think in any community at this point, it's super, super critical for any school community, any community in general, to come together and define for that community what is high quality learning. I think that's really important. Why do we start there? So as a practitioner of this work and who's passionate about this work, it's always nice to sort of start with the end in mind, right? And then we build backwards from there, because we want to be crystal clear what we're working towards. It unites the forces, it unites the efforts, it unites us as a community, and know where we're headed. And the vision is super, super clear. But beyond that, there's one other factor in my 23 years of leading this work right now is no one is ever going to agree at the same time. We come to this work with our own personal experiences as we've gone through our educational system. Our personal biases are just personal beliefs in this world and what education should be. I think it's absolutely critical for everyone to lay it out on the table, because in the conversations that I've led about this, I have the school of people who say, you know what, we want rigorous learning, high quality learning is offering 50 AP classes in our high school. You know what I mean? So you have those folks. And then you have someone like me that says, well, high quality learning is when a young person truly, truly knows who they are and loves themselves, right? Another one would say, no. high quality learning is when young people align to the purpose and they leave us knowing where they're headed for the next step to get to that final destination of their purpose and their call. So when you create space for everyone to come together and share, that's a beautiful opportunity to unite your community around defining what high quality learning is, right? So that is one of the first things that I would do in working with a new community, just so we could be crystal clear on where we're headed. And then once we get there, I think the second step is really being the bridge right after that and traveling this journey with this community. Now we have a rough draft of what high quality learning is. The next thing, what we're going to build is, what's the profile of a graduate?
Yes. I was going to say it connects so beautifully just around how you're uniting the community, right? Because it's just the foundational step for our school teams to do that, bring the community in. And that was what I was like, okay, if he's not going to bring it up, I got to make that connection.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. And then, so now we have a rough draft of a profile of a graduate. Now, with this profile of a graduate, with this rough draft of high quality learning, this is probably the two most important seminal processes to bring transformation within any school community. Why? Because now, just like young people, and sometimes we forget this as adults, we want to know why too. We want to know why we're doing things. We want to know how our work contributes to the greater good of the larger vision. Like, we want to know. And vision is really, really important. But I say second to that is, people need to know how their work contributes to that vision. So then you have the high quality learning definition, you have a profile of a graduate. Now you could start designing your school in a way that helps you meet that profile of a graduate, right? So now you have, so if you say, like, so just to give you a specific example, like a profile, one indicator of a profile of a graduate is, young people will graduate college ready, career ready, and community ready, right? So then when we implement real world learning and internships into the schedule, and young people are allowed to leave the school to learn, it's in our effort to meet our profile of a graduate of young people being career ready, and it also aligns to how we defined high quality learning.
Right.
So now everyone is on the same page as far as, and we're not going to do everything in 1 year. You know, we have to be very methodical about this, and it's a gradual release. But that really, really is the fertile soil for a community that can be planted, that can be nurtured, and that can really flourish together if done well. And I think I share that with you because every community that we're invited to come in, the local context takes precedence, right? So we have distinguishers, which make us BPL schools, but we're not a network that comes in and said, hey, okay, everybody, this is day one of professional development. Everybody take their binder and turn to page 3.
Right.
That's just not who we are. Like, that is not like, so and you've interviewed some of our leaders, so we have about 143 schools in the United States and about 150 others internationally, right? You go to any other school, not one of them are alike by design, right? And that's done by design. But there are some through threads that you can feel, that you will see, that you will hear, that you will experience, that tells you intimately, oh, this is a big picture school, you know? But that's the purpose, because every individual school community is different. And anyone who's looking to do work with school districts needs to, that's first and foremost, like, you have to understand that, acknowledge that, with that.
I just like that through line of the local context taking precedence is just so important. I do see a lot of leaders who follow closely with innovative, states that are doing really great things and the contexts that are happening in those places. But often that exploration or curiosity kind of ends with what's happening at the state level, and they're not diving into those communities to see the differences and understand those stories. So they're taking it for salt and going, yes, Kentucky is doing this amazing work around the portrait of a learner. This is fantastic. I'm going to do the portrait of a learner. But okay, you can adopt the vision, But to actually create the practice, you need to go deeper. You need to go local.
Correct.
You need to understand those stories and how to adapt it to your own context.
100%. 100. I'm going to double tap that. I have nothing else to add.
I do want to take one step back to something you mentioned a little bit earlier, and it was the teacher as an advisor in this process. And,
Yes.
A lot of teachers who are looking to make this shift, there is this underlying sense of fear around their role changing in the classroom. And I'm not talking about, what you read on the news articles that AI is going to replace teachers. That's never going to happen, everybody. I'm more thinking about, the teacher's fear of giving up control in their classroom, right? Where they're no longer going to be the dispenser of knowledge, but the support for the student. Talk to me just a little bit about how you help teachers through that transformation of what their role change looks like.
Yeah. It's interesting. So whether you're a diehard, content advocate, or you're an innovative student-centered learner, I think what I would like to connect with people on is just on a human level, right? And I would meet any teacher right now who loves their content. And I would get at the heart of why they got into education. And I would think that the majority of teachers got into education is because they love young people, they believe in young people, and they want all of them thrive. And so I would dig into the conversation. It's just like, what does thriving look like for young people? You know what I mean? Part of it is getting the expertise from you as the content specialist. That's part of it. I want to acknowledge that. But there are so many other components that helps young people thrive. So I would like to meet every teacher where they're at and support them, because spending the time to become a master in your craft, that is to be honored.
Right.
And I respect that and I honor that so much. But I think it's always the question of for what purpose? And if the purpose is to help all young people thrive, then really we need to be analyzing what that means. We need to be analyzing what young people need. And then we also need to reflect, in 2025, the landscape of how young people thrive is completely different from just 5 years ago. And I don't even want to talk like a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades ago. Just 5 years ago is completely different. And what I mean is just really the integration of just AI. And so, what I really love to do is just connect on a human level with all educators and lift them up and understand that, yes, you are an expert and should be celebrated. But also the work that we're doing right now is in service of young people. And the mission is to help all of them thrive. And so let's dig into what are all the different components that help young people thrive? And let's talk about that.
Right.
So essentially, if you're talking specifically about working with teachers who are trying to understand what this new pedagogy, this role shift is, I would really take that approach, Jordan.
Yes.
That's where I would lean.
And I feel like then, it expands into the role of the administrator and how they support their staff in all of this. And then it extends out into the community. And now you have this whole, it's very cyclical in that nature of discussing and in conversation that I've had with big picture learning schools myself. What I always found fascinating was they don't design a model and design it and say, okay, this is our model, we're going to implement it. It's always changing. There's always conversation, adaptation, learning to happen. And to me, that is also a brilliant part of the design.
Yeah. Well, I'll share two things. One is Elliot Washer, who's our co-founder, I'm just so grateful because he's been my mentor for the last 23 years. And honestly, one of the most brilliant minds that I've been so fortunate to sort of be connected to. But he clarified something for me years ago when I was an early advisor, because during our conversation, I called big picture learning a model. And he looked at me and he stopped me right in my tracks. He said, "Son, I want to." The first thing he said to me is just like, "Son, words matter."
Mm.
And so I'm sharing this with you so you understand that no matter where you go, there's a different lexicon, and behind that lexicon, there is deeply rooted cultural context for words. So you need to be very, very mindful of that where you go. So number one, that was a gift, a gem that was handed to me. But then the second thing he said to me, "We're not a model, we're a design."
Mm.
And that distinction, I'll never forget that conversation. I was just like, oh, that was Elliot, my mentor, schooling me to say like, "Hey man, remember what I shared with you earlier, local context takes precedence." That is where the design comes in, because that's where the local context sort of helps the birth of this design in ways that includes the cultural local context. And I'll just share with you quickly the design, what you'll see the design sort of permeate, and it's very free flowing, very organic. But there are some key sort of pillars that you will see at our schools, and I just want to lift them up quickly. The first one is one student at a time. So this is what we mean by, personalization. Every single one of our students has an individual learning plan. And on that learning plan that they help co-construct, it is strength-based and it is interest-based. And it is this learning plan that really guides the learning quarter by quarter, trimester, or whatever system you're on. But young people are literally responsibles and co-designers of their learning. The second piece is really around advisory. So advisory is just a name. It's been called different things, over time, but it's a small learning community that stays together for a set amount of time, led by an advisor. And additionally, the space in advisory is a respected time for a couple of things. It's to dive deeper into relationships, to connect deeply into students' interests, which is the relevance, and to push even further around the rigor that young people are learning. So it's the relationships, relevance, and rigor that we talk about and everyone knows about. But advisory is a place specifically for that. The third component is really around real-world learning. So when we talk about real-world learning, it's that piece that what I shared earlier, that the community is a school. So young people are allowed to leave to learn. And essentially, the community is just an extension of the school in the classroom. So if a young person, depending on their interests, they could be doing an apprenticeship, internship, community service learning, dual enrollment. There's just so many things that young people could be engaged in. But the crux of it is, based on their interests, they are connected to an adult who shares that interest. And that's the sort of linchpin to this ecosystem, because now they have an adult who is really mentoring them around this interest, that they're giving them all this hidden knowledge, if you will, in the industry. So that's really important. And the two other things I'll say quickly is interest-driven project-based learning. So everyone in this world right now knows what project-based learning is. Big Picture supports it. The only thing we say is, once you teach young people what high-quality project-based learning is, let them design it. And so the young people in our school, our goal is for them to design their interdisciplinary projects. And the last thing is around authentic assessments. Why is that so critical? Look, there's a place and time for standardized testing. But when it takes up 99% of the oxygen in the room when we talk about measuring what students are learning over time. But what we do know also through research, through evidence, it's an incomplete picture.
Right.
And so authentic assessments really creates more space and more avenues to really show how smart young people are, not if they are smart. They are smart. But when you have only one standardized measure, it doesn't give them a fair opportunity to show how brilliant they are. So authentic assessments, such as a competency-based framework, really, really allows us to do it. So when you go into our schools, those 5 tenets, which we call ARIA, that's what you see, feel, and experience, all working together in unison to help all young people thrive.
I love the call out to the authentic assessment piece. Assessment is just such a loaded word these days. And, when I talk to people about standardized assessments, it's just a picture, a moment in time. And I'm a believer that assessment should just be this ongoing, active part of learning. And I was talking with a family member about this very recently, and I was explaining how, some of our partners are shifting their practice, and they were really struggling to understand it. I said, okay, let me break this down in the most real world way that I can. You stay up till midnight watching the Blue Jays go to the World Series. You wake up the next day, you're groggy, you're tired, and you jump on a phone call at 8:30 in the morning. Are you your best self? Are you leading the best call? Are you asking the best questions? Are you as articulate as you need to be? 9 times out of 10, the answer to that is going to be no. I said, okay, you're not your best self. So why should the standard of one of our young people be held to that if they woke up for that test that day and skipped breakfast and were running late and were not their best self? Why do we hold that to the pedestal? Right. And they didn't have an answer. I said, well, this is exactly the premise of the need to shift assessment, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. But I also think, let's make it a little spicy.
I'm here for the spice. I am here for the spice, all of it.
Right. So a fundamental belief that we have in our network is all young people are brilliant. Mm-hmm. It's a fundamental belief of ours. Right. That's a different proposition if someone doesn't believe in that.
Right.
And so what we try to do is, because this is a deep, deep, fundamental core belief that we have, we try to create assessments that show how brilliant young people are. So that is our why. Why it's not only because it paints a more complete picture of our young people. I mean, the evidence is clear, but for us, it's just that we just know you're brilliant. So we're going to design different ways to measure, acknowledge all the different pieces of you as a human being, and we're going to value it, and we're going to substantiate it, and we're going to celebrate it. We're going to be 100% authentic and honest with you. So if there are shortcomings, we're going to give you that feedback. We're going to give you an intentional time for you to reflect. So there's student agency and ownership around your life and your learning. And we're going to support you every step of the way, And if you go all the way back, even just calling on our indigenous ancestors, when we think about just good pedagogy in helping young people thrive, I think one of the best things that we do is give multiple ways that they can show what they know, and that's essentially, when we talk about authentic assessments, that's really, really at the heart of why we do that, is because we just believe all young people are brilliant. And I just want to say, I can speak on, really on behalf of the United States, because that's my context and where I've been. Our assessments don't come with that proposition.
Right.
Our assessments are built on, we want to know if you're smart. And that's very, very different when we say, no, I want to measure how smart you are.
Right.
So I just want to keep saying that, because that is the clear distinction around our why and our purpose around authentic assessments.
And, kind of reading between the line a bit, something that you mentioned, creating space for intentional reflection. I've been having this thought quite often myself, of the pace in which our world is moving right now is astronomically fast. There's not a lot of time in a traditional bell schedule for students to slow down. It's class to class, jumping from one topic area to the next, trying to fit as many curriculum standards into a short amount of time, to learn as much as you can. And then that dovetails obviously then into the real world, and our workplaces are picking up steam. The advent of technology, the world around us, social media, everything is so fast. But what you just mentioned stood out to me, because you're saying you're allowing space to be created for things to slow down, for reflection to happen, right? And I feel like that's something that society as a whole needs to kind of hold on to, because it is overwhelming at times. And I want to just call that out. It resonated deeply with me.
Brother, I support you. I think, well, when we think about like high quality learning, right? I think authentic reflection is probably one of the most underutilized pedagogical practices, not only in schools, but it's just in society in general. Taking intentional time to take a deep, deep look in the mirror at ourselves and really credit us for how far we've come, crediting us for this is what I'm naturally good at and the skills that I'm really getting better. And also talking about, man, I really fell short here.
Mm.
This is what I learned by falling short, and this is how I'm going to strategize differently next time. And so when I process all of this next quarter or this next segment of time, here are my intentions. Here is my why. Here's how you can support me. Here's how I'm going to take responsibility for my life and my learning. And that's the power of reflecting, you know. And I think about that too because we're all adults in this world. Like, where is our practice? Where is it at the end of the day that you sort of sit down and just think for a second, just like, what are all the things that I could love myself for today that I did? And where are the pieces of learning that, you know, I need to really get better at? Or is it at the end of the week? You know,
Right.
Are you reflecting on how your week went? So very similarly at our schools, like we have constant opportunities for reflection because one, in advisory, young people have one-on-one meetings with their advisors on a regular basis. They're also talking about their project work and their learning as a community of learners on a regular basis. And then also from the performance-based assessment and authentic assessment side, young people are constantly doing presentations of learning. So they are not only showing their mastery or developing their mastery for the content that they're learning and the things that they're doing, but they're also soliciting feedback in their learning process. And at our schools, like there is no, listen, I want to share with you an authentic assessments, which just blew my mind, right? So at this point, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of exhibitions. So presentations of learning with young people, right? So I'll just have to give a shout out. Years ago, I went to our Met Sacramento school in California. And their culture of inquiry and feedback was so strong. At the end of the exhibition, for the first time in my big picture career, in my career as an educator, I looked around the room and I said, I have no feedback for you.
Mm.
Why? Because all these young people took all the words out of my mouth. And the reason is because the culture respected reflection, the culture respected inquiry, the culture respected feedback to the highest level.
Mm.
So they see it as, oh, you're helping me be my best self. And so when I experienced that, I was just like, oh my God, this is the exhibition was stellar in itself. But what I experienced in the room with all the young people and how they showed their love for this young person presenting by giving them that critical feedback, I was just blown away, brother. So that is one of the highest levels if we want to talk about quality of learning. Mm-hmm. It's the culture of inquiry and feedback in a community. So yeah, I just want to let that. I don't know what brought me back there, but that was something really, really seminal in my experience in my career.
Well, and I just feel that it's such something that we really need to continue to emphasize because feedback is a powerful vehicle. It's a powerful vehicle to move learning forward. But I do see a lot in the real world that people struggle to internalize feedback and use it in a positive way. And that's where I see its place in our classrooms is creating 21st century learners who can implement feedback in a meaningful way. You know, our industry is telling us what they want. Students that have the durable skills that you mentioned already at the top of the show, but they don't need students that have every single checkbox. They need somebody who can critically think, collaborate, receive feedback, and grow from that, right? And it's just become a fundamental aspect of the culture that your organization is promoting to our schools.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, spot on.
Just to not switch topics, but to build upon some of this, I would be remiss not to bring kind of technology into the conversation at this stage. Obviously, with the advancements of technology that we're seeing, it is helping us to push and innovate further in a lot of stuff that we're doing. But, from your experiences, how are you seeing technology help push innovation and not just become this substitute of traditional tasks? A teacher implementing a tool just to, do, basic tasks for them. How do you see it actually pushing the needle, continuing to innovate?
Yeah. Well, I'll share with you right now, brother. So for us, going back to, and hopefully I'm just keeping clear on my message. Hopefully it's not, too repetitive. But I'm going to go back to high quality learning. But in our community, high quality learning, one of the spaces where we really, really put all our eggs in is the high quality student driven real world learning projects that people are working on, meaning they've identified their interests. We've connected them with a local expert. Now, what are they doing and learning at this real world learning site? And usually it is an interdisciplinary project that we co-design between the advisor, the student, and the mentor. So I want to just take a step back a little bit. In 2003, when I was an advisor, I had 15 different students with 15 different interests, and that's just one. Not all of us walk around with just one interest. So my young people had multiple interests, right? We finally get them to a project, and their project has 15, 20 different components. So it's just this managing component, right? But I am the content expert. I'm a history teacher. We've got the mentor who's an industry expert, and then we have this young person who's an expert in their interests, right? You bring us together, there is strength in that community in those three stakeholders, right? But there's also some gaps. One, I'll just say, is just like, I'm history, so I'm not certified in all these other content areas. And depending on my lived experiences, that's what I bring into the equation and the areas that I need to grow. A mentor is an expert in their field, a real professional, went to school for it, but they're not educators. So there's a real gap in them understanding what it means to like pedagogical practices, universal design for learning, how to work with young people. Like there's that. And a young person, they have this interest, but they don't know what they don't know. They don't have the exposure, the depth and breadth of just like what they could be doing and learning. So I say all that to say AI has really, really come into the room and really shaken up the space between those stakeholders. So what do I mean by that? What we have found and what we're tinkering with in our network are 6 criteria around AI that we're really leveraging to help us get closer to high quality student driven real world learning projects. So the first one is just project ideation. Right. So the ideas around the projects, right? And usually that takes so much time because depending on the student's interest, depending on what the mentor is working on, depending on myself as an advisor, like how creative I am, it's really based on those 3 stakeholders. But now in a matter of milliseconds, I could get incredible ideas around a project that really will blow a young person's mind. So that's one. The second piece is being super explicit around the competencies and skills that young people are exposed to and are working towards through this project.
Right.
So going back to like, some people might be wondering why, wow, so in academics, career, and social emotion, like, yo, how do you get all that? How do you figure that out? Well, in a matter of seconds, I base it on this project. Please align it to my state standards academically. Please align it to my CTE standards, and please align it to the your skills. And so again, just like with anything in AI, I just want to say the caveat to all this is we don't just ask questions and then just implement, but it allows us to really process in a very broad, deep way around these different components that help us facilitate the learning with our young people. So it helps us be very explicit around the skills that young people are developing through the projects, right? And it goes back to your question. It's just like, if I'm an academic teacher, like how do I ensure that there's a high level of that's right. And so AI has really, really helped us around that. The third piece is really around chunking. Our young people are not short on they're big dreamers, and that's what they're meant to do. As a young person, the one thing that I try to do more than anything is don't kill their dreams. And they're allowed to dream big. Now, something that they need help with is, okay, that's my dream. let's break this down into like a realistic sort of timeline and the work that I need to do and what. So they don't have that skill yet. So that's why we help them with the chunking. So this is the project you want to work on. This is how we chunk it into realistic tasks.
Right.
And second to that is timelining it. So this is the set amount of time that we have. Here are the expected week by week, day by day expectations around this project. This is what you need to do to make sure that you finish by the set date that you established with your mentor, right? The fifth component is really around the products. So as much as it is about developing, the academic skills, we want to know the authentic products that young people are creating through their project. Like, what are they? And they're tangible and intangible products that young people can create. But what is it? What are those products? So AI is something was that. And lastly, going back to what we spent a little bit of time on, it's just like authentic assessments.
Right.
Like, how do you measure a young person has mastered or learning through or developing or emerging, whatever you want to call it? Like, AI is really helping us develop authentic assessments based on individual projects that people are working on. So those 6 measures, that's what we're leveraging AI to give us its expertise on. So then now, myself as an advisor who is a history teacher, I don't carry all that weight on me. You know what I mean? Now, in a very intentional way, I can have conversations with my students to say, like, hey, here's some project ideas. What do you think about this? And like, what are you most excited about? And let's talk about this some more. Now I could take from AI and go to my mentor and say, like, hey, here are the industry standards that you're exposing my kids to. What about these 3 that I really, really want to lean into? What do you think about that? So it just allows us to facilitate the learning much more intentionally, much more fluidly, and much more centered around the young person. So it's allowing us to deliver our design in a much more effective way. And that's what we're working towards. And just like everyone else, it's messy as hell. There's, this stuff that we're figuring out, along the way. But what I have seen in the 13 schools that I'm in connections with, I'm talking to principals, I'm seeing practices, because I lead school visits in this experience we call BPL guided experience. I'm like able to be there and be with the young people and see their projects and talk to them about the process for learning. What I see right now is just really, really promising, man. And, I'll just say one last thing and I'll be quiet, but like, there are a lot of concerns that are real around AI. I just want to lift that up. Okay. Ethical concerns, privacy concerns, there's a bunch of, and I want to acknowledge that. We're muddling through that like everyone else. But what's really, really exciting to me is just that I think it's going to allow us to really take back that word personalization.
Right.
Because personalization got co-opted a decade ago. And we got co-opted by just, new iterations of technology that can modify and adjust based on student responses to the same standardized curriculum. And we call that personalization. You know what the key word of personalization is, Jordan? The person.
Of course.
So we got to put the person back in personalization. And how do you do that? Lead with their strengths, lead with their interests. And so, sorry if I'm being a little spicy there, but I think AI has the opportunity and it's promising right now for us to deliver on this phrase of one student at a time. So I'm just super excited about how to do that. And that's what we're trying to figure out in our network right now.
And, just hearing the passion for the last 47 minutes of our conversation up to this point, and the focus of the learner just kind of always being front and center, I feel is, something that everybody can just get really excited about. And a lot of what you're talking about and in that last story, the skills, the strength that students have, I imagine there's also this opportunity to reflect and identify weaknesses and create performance-based tasks around developing around those weaknesses. But just to kind of pull a bunch of threads together, you were also talking about the portrait of a graduate earlier. And one thing that I'm hearing is, a community comes together. They create this North Star. There's 5 competencies that they are going to invite students to showcase toward, and that's going to be their North Star to career ready, future ready, whatever semantics they choose to use around it. But obviously there's more skills. There's obviously more than just that, right? So, I mean, in your experience as you're supporting some of these things, we hear collaboration, critical thinking, problem solving as like the big skills. Like, what are some skills that are often kind of like overlooked that schools can kind of double click on and support the whole growth of their students?
The one thing I'll just say right now, because it's front and center of my heart in different ways in education and outside of education, I want to lift up explicitly, and we talked about the durable skills, but I think one thing that we as a community need to come to grips with is discernment. And discernment is really, really critical in an age of disinformation and misinformation. And meeting the young people where they're at, a lot of our young people, including adults, are getting a lot of their information online and on social media, with these little snippets. And if we do not help our young people know what strategies they need to put into place when they see something, when they hear something, I think that is a real danger. But also a real opportunity for us as educators to really help young people sift through that. And it's just one of those things that we've really got to pay attention to, because if they can't see what's real and what's fake, it's really not going to help them thrive or flourish at all. It's actually going to be a prohibitor of that. So I think that's really, really critical, and it doesn't get talked about a lot. I 100% get the 21st century learning skills, and now it's evolved so much. It's the durable skills now. I think that's really important, but I think this is a skill too. And again, it's a soft skill that doesn't get talked about a lot. But I think it's just on a human level. I think it's really important for young people to love themselves. I think it is the foundation of everything. If a young person does not know who they are, don't love who they are, don't know their value, don't know their purpose, don't know their contribution, it's a really, really sad starting point. And I think we as a community need to understand, yes, part of our responsibility is helping young people discover all the things that make them unique and love themselves. That is a 21st century skill. This is what I'm interested in. This is what I'm really good at. This is what I'm trying to develop. This is what I'm not so good at. And I'm trying to get, that is so critical as we navigate this, really, really, this space that we call the future of learning and living and existing. It's just like, no one really knows what it is. But I think, and I would wager a lot, if a young person has a solid foundation of just who they are and love themselves for it, we can work with that. We can 100% work with that. So I just want to lift that up too. I'm not saying that as opposed to like critical thinking, collaboration, agency, those are all important. But those are two that I feel in the spaces that I've been in education, it just doesn't get enough. It just doesn't get enough love. Just don't give enough prioritization in my mind. So I just want to lift those two.
Yeah. Why I love getting to have these conversations is because I get to ask this question to a lot of leaders, and I love hearing the responses. And I do it intentionally because I fear that with historical trends of what our education system does is it comes up with some sort of beautiful initiative rooted in the best intentions that eventually transforms into another compliance factor. And I just see with all of the similarities between a lot of these portraits that I believe so wonderfully in, that I just don't want it to just become, again, a streamlined, consistent, pick one of these. And that's why I love having these conversations. I've had 3 of them this week. The first one where I asked myself and I said, what's something that you would tell a 10-year-old Jordan is the skill to lean into most that will help you be your best self? And the word I came up with was relationships. Relationships drive action and allow you to do things that you never would have otherwise uncovered. Another conversation I had, Sonn, they said confidence.
Mhm.
Today, to love yourself.
Correct.
Notice how all of those are about the person,
Yes.
right?
Yes, that's right.
So,
That's right. And I'll take it a step further because it's so like, we come into this space, into this world, like we are just a cornucopia of our lived experiences, right? As adults. And I just want to share with you why that is so critical to me and why that is so important is because I've been on the back end of that. So I just want to share a little bit about who I am authentically and vulnerably. So I am the son of genocide survivors. My parents are my heroes. But being my heroes, that doesn't mean they're invincible. They had severe PTSD and they were in survival mode for majority of their adult life and also taking care of my brother and I. What that meant was they handed me into a failing public school system. And so I just want to paint a picture for you real quick, and I'll get back to why I said loving yourself, because it's so foundational. So my brother, I have one brother, he's a year older than me, and Zach has like photographic memory. Okay. So you take that photographic memory and then you pair it up with the rote learning system that we have. It's like a hand in glove.
mm-hmm.
So at a very young age, I used to watch my brother. Right? He was a kid that fit into the system. He fit. So what happened to those kids who can fit? And when I say fit, he fit into their assessment system. So what did the assessment system of one size fits all tell my brother? You are great. Let's celebrate you. Let's give you all the privileges, whatever you want. I used to watch my brother get every single award. And I used to sit there, right? And at a very, very young age, what did I begin to do with myself? Right? Two things. One is I started to hate myself and I grew a fixed mindset. So at a very young age, I told myself, I didn't get the smart gene. You know what I mean? Like I got the short end of the stick. Like I'm not a bad kid, but I'm incapable of being smart, And to this day, Jordan, as a 45-year-old man, when people talk about smart, I still cringe a little bit because I'm still working through that. Because this one size fits all assessment system, that's what it did to me. It really made me an outcast and just pushed me aside and said, you have nothing to give because you can't do well on these assessments. So you're not smart, kid, get out the way. And the sad part, Jordan, is that's happening to young people right now in 2025. Right now. And I really want your listeners and everyone to pay attention to that. Because they say, there's an old saying, like you can say whatever you want to people, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I want to be crystal clear as educators, our standardized assessments definitely make young people feel a certain way about themselves. And for years, it has hindered me in reaching my full potential. And that is one of the main things that we need to focus on and talk about when we think about self-love. And this is why when we have multiple assessments where we can celebrate young people in all their brilliance, that's how we do that. That's the antidote. That's how we like cultivate the brilliance of all learners. It's like our assessments need to acknowledge how smart they already are. So, yeah.
Just thank you for that story. I greatly appreciate it. And there was a lot of those factors of resonance in my own lived experience as well that, listeners who have followed along with the show have definitely heard from me about my experience in education, similar to what you had with your education and the way that those assessments kind of painted a picture of who you are as an individual and where you can go to. So thank you for the vulnerability. I greatly appreciate it.
No worries. I appreciate you.
But as we're kind of wrapping up the conversation, final thoughts, I'm really curious. You're obviously an incredibly passionate individual when it comes to the work that you're doing within the Big Picture Learning Network and how you're helping to transform our school systems.
Mhm.
Give us some final thoughts. Why do you see this work helping students with real world relevancy need to continue to grow to be the future of our K-12 education system?
Man, oh my God, our children are everything, man. Our children are literally everything to us in our community, our families, our society. They are the most sacred possession we have. And education is everyone's business. It's not just the educators inside the school walls, it's everybody's business. And so we have an obligation, a responsibility, a commitment to show young people how brilliant they are. And so I really encourage the listeners to really reflect on that and really try to think about all the different ways that we can come together in school, outside of school, communities to really join forces to cultivate the brilliance of all young people. Because I don't think there is a higher responsibility for us as people. I think we owe it to our young people to support them and to help them be their best selves and to maximize their potential. Honestly, my personal philosophy in life is just that one of the greatest tragedies in life is not reaching your fullest potential. And so even a deeper rooted reason why this work is really, really personal to me. And I just deeply believe that all young people are brilliant. And so, yeah, I'd ask people to reflect on that. It's just like, how are young people brilliant? Every single one of them that come across your world, whether it's a local baseball game, little league, all the way into your classroom. It could be in your church. It could be in your family gathering. How are they brilliant? And let's leverage that to continue to show how brilliant they are.
We're talking about systems transformation. We're talking about breaking down barriers so that everybody can join forces to cultivate the brilliance of our young people. Sonn, thank you so much for joining us here today on the show. It's been an amazing conversation.
Jordan, thank you so much for having me, brother. It means the world to me. Thank you for giving the space and the time for me to just share a little bit about my work, man. I really, really appreciate it.
That was inspirational leader, child advocate, and national director of partnerships for Big Picture Learning, Dr. Sonn Sam. Hey, thanks for listening to the show, and please make sure to hit the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. I'm Jordan Lewis, and you've been listening to the Growth Over Grades podcast.